cats never did that. They remained independent, uncontrollable, wild at heart. So why are there hundreds of millions of cats living in human homes right now? The answer takes us back to a moment when humans made a decision that accidentally solved a problem nobody had figured out how to handle. And when that solution showed up, everything else followed. Around 10,000 BCE, something revolutionary happened in the Fertile Crescent, the strip of land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Humans stopped being purely nomadic hunters and gatherers. They started farming. But farming wasn't a smooth transition. It was a gamble. People spent months planting seeds, nurturing crops, and watching them grow. When harvest arrived, they suddenly had more grain than they could eat immediately. So they built storage systems, granaries made of stone and wood where they could keep surplus food safe. This was progress. This was security. This was civilization being born. But it created a problem that nobody anticipated. The problem within a few years of creating large grain stores, something else moved in uninvited. Rodents. Specifically, black rats and house mice. Think about this from their perspective. For millions of years, rodents had survived by searching for scattered seeds, insects, and vegetation. It was exhausting work. Most didn't make it. Then, suddenly, there was an entire building filled with food. Unlimited food. No predators. No competition. The rodent population didn't just increase, it exploded. And this wasn't a minor inconvenience. A single rat eats about 27 pounds of grain per year. A single mouse consumes about a pound. A storage facility surrounded by hundreds or thousands of rodents meant losing a massive percentage of the year's harvest. In a society where food security determined survival, this wasn't just frustrating. It threatened the entire community. The attempted solution. Early farmers tried everything. They built better granaries with thicker walls. They used traps made of wood and stone. They probably tried poisons from natural plants. Some of it worked temporarily. Nothing worked permanently. The rodent problem got worse every single year as populations grew exponentially. Ancient documents from Egypt and Mesopotamia mention rodent plagues with genuine desperation. In later centuries, this problem would lead to the Black Death. But back then, in those early farming villages, it was simply a crisis they had to manage. The unexpected visitor, then something happened that changed everything. And it didn't involve human intervention at all. There was a predator that lived in those regions. The African wildcat Felis sylvestris libica. These weren't small animals. They were fierce hunters with sharp teeth and sharp instincts. In the wild, they hunted birds, small mammals, and reptiles across grasslands and deserts. One day, we don't know exactly when, but it was probably gradual. Wildcats noticed the rodent populations exploding around human settlements. A single wildcat could hunt hundreds of rodents in a year. To these predators, human grain storage facilities were essentially all-you-can-eat restaurants. The wildcats started hanging around farms. They killed rodents. The rodent problem decreased. The humans noticed. The realization this is the crucial moment. The moment everything changed. Humans realized that they didn't need to solve this problem themselves. The cats were solving it for them. Some farmers probably tried to scare the cats away at first. But as they watched the rodent populations decline and their grain stores remain full, they made a decision. They stopped forcing the cats to leave. Then they started actively allowing them to stay. Eventually, they probably left out scraps of food and water, not out of affection, but out of practical self-interest. Keep the cats fed and comfortable, and the cats keep the rodents away. It was a transaction, a partnership, a deal made without words. The consequence, what happened next, was inevitable. As the cats stayed closer to human settlements, they started breeding. Generation after generation, the cats that were most comfortable around humans, the ones who didn't flee at every sound, the ones who could tolerate human presence, survived and reproduced more successfully. This is crucial. The cats weren't being bred by humans deliberately. Instead, humans were unconsciously selecting for cats that tolerated them. The feral behavior softened over generations. Not because humans trained them, but because the cats that bred most successfully were naturally less aggressive toward humans. The cats were domesticating themselves. Meanwhile, the relationship deepened. As cats lived closer to humans, they benefited from shelter and scraps. Humans benefited from rodent control. Both populations thrived in ways they never could have apart. The unexpected result. But here's where it gets interesting. Different regions made different choices. In Egypt, this relationship became religious. Cats weren't just useful, they became sacred. Statues were carved of them. They were mummified and buried with ceremonies. The goddess Bastet was depicted as a cat. An estimated 30 million cat mummies have been found in Egyptian tombs. In Europe and the Mediterranean, the relationship was purely practical for centuries. Cats were tools, Mausers, nothing more. But something happened in Asia. In China and Japan, cats spread through farming communities just like everywhere else. But the relationship became more personal. Artwork from the Tang dynasty shows cats as companions, not just workers. Poetry celebrates them. They became beloved. This is stunning because it reveals something profound. The same animal, in different human cultures, became different things. Not biologically different, but socially different. In some places, sacred. In others, utilitarian. In others, beloved. The twist, and then in medieval Europe, something horrifying happened. The church decided that cats, especially black cats, were connected to witchcraft and evil. Cats were burned, drowned, tortured. In some medieval cities, killing cats became part of religious festivals. The cat population in Europe collapsed, and then the rats came back. Millions of them. They spread plague. They destroyed grain. They infested homes and cities. The Black Death, one of history's most devastating pandemics, killed roughly 75 million people in the 14th century. Scientists now understand that rats carrying plague-infected fleas were a major vector for the disease. The plague didn't kill Europe because of rats alone, but the massive rat population, thriving in the absence of cats, absolutely made things worse. It took until the Renaissance for Europeans to realize they'd made a terrible mistake. Slowly, gradually, they stopped killing cats. The cats came back. The rat populations decreased. The plague subsided. But here's the thing that rewrites everything we think we know about cat domestication. Cats may have never actually been domesticated. Not really. Dogs were domesticated. We fundamentally changed their genetics, their behavior, their entire purpose. We created dozens of breeds that couldn't survive in the wild. We made them dependent on us. Cats are different. A domestic cat can abandon humans tomorrow and survive perfectly fine in the wild. Their behavior didn't fundamentally change. They still hunt. They still have independent personalities. They still resist training. What actually happened is that humans and cats entered into a mutualistic agreement, a partnership where both parties benefited. And we've been calling it domestication for thousands of years because we didn't know what else to call it. The cats didn't let us domesticate them. They tolerated us, and only as much as their circumstances required. So why do we live with cats? Not because we domesticated them. Not because they chose companionship. But because of a problem that nobody solved and a predator that showed up at exactly the right moment. Cats came into our homes because we created an environment where they thrived, grain storage that attracted rodents. They stayed because the arrangement benefited them, and we kept them because we realized that our survival depended on them. The entire relationship, thousands of years of human-cat coexistence, started as a practical solution to a forgotten agricultural crisis, a rodent problem. Everything else, the love, the companionship, the billions of cat videos, the memes, the spiritual reverence in some cultures, all of it grew from that single practical moment when a human looked at a wildcat eating rats near their grain storage and thought, let's not drive this one away. The cat didn't choose the human. The human didn't choose the cat. A problem chose both of them. And that's what makes this story so remarkable. It reveals something fundamental about how species coexist. Sometimes the deepest relationships between humans and animals aren't about love or training or intention. They're about mutual survival. They're about solving problems together. But this also creates an even bigger question. If cats came to us for food and shelter, and not for companionship, what does that mean about the relationship we think we have with them now? If you enjoy uncovering the real stories behind the histories we think we know, the forgotten truths that change how we see the world, subscribe for more documentaries that go deeper